The wish that changed everything. Sometimes life doesn't reward the richest person in the room. Sometimes it rewards the one whose heart refuses to give up. Before we begin, if you love emotional stories filled with hope, family, and unforgettable moments, don't forget to subscribe and join our storytelling family. Now, let's begin. The storm rolled across the airport like a dark curtain, drenching everything in heavy rain. Lightning flashed above the private hangars as ground crews rushed to secure expensive aircraft before the wind became even stronger. Inside Hangar 7, mechanics hurried from one toolbox to another, but no one dared approach the sleek white private jet sitting silently under the bright floodlights. Its owner was standing nearby. Alexander Blackwell, one of the youngest billionaire CEOs in America, stared at his damaged jet with cold blue eyes. His company was hours away from signing the biggest international contract in its history, and if he couldn't leave before sunrise, the deal would collapse. "The engine still won't start, sir," one mechanic admitted nervously. Alexander's jaw tightened. "I've hired the best engineers in this city," he said. "Why is nobody capable of fixing one airplane?" The room fell silent. One mechanic quietly whispered, "There's one man, but he doesn't work here anymore." Alexander looked up. "Then call him." Across town, Ethan Carter had just finished reading his 6-year-old daughter Lily a bedtime story inside their tiny apartment. "Daddy," Lily smiled sleepily, hugging her worn teddy bear. "When I grow up, can we still live together forever?" Ethan kissed her forehead. "Forever and always. What if you get married?" He paused. "I don't think that's going to happen. But every princess needs a mommy." His smile faded. "You already have the best daddy in the world." Lily giggled. "I know, but I still wish I had someone to braid my hair." Those innocent words stayed in Ethan's heart long after she fell asleep. 3 years earlier, Ethan had lost his wife Emily to a sudden illness. Since then, every morning began before sunrise. He cooked breakfast, packed lunches, braided Lily's hair after watching online tutorials, worked long hours repairing aircraft engines, and somehow still found energy to read bedtime stories every night. Money was always tight, but love was never in short supply. Just as Ethan covered Lily with her blanket, his old phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello. This is Blackwell Aviation. We need your help immediately. I retired from emergency work. Our CEO is offering any amount of money. I'm not interested." The manager hesitated before saying, "If this plane isn't repaired tonight, hundreds of employees could lose their jobs." Ethan looked toward Lily sleeping peacefully. "I'll be there." 40 minutes later, Ethan walked into the enormous hangar carrying nothing but an old metal toolbox. Some mechanics laughed quietly. "That's the legendary mechanic. He doesn't even look professional." Alexander folded his arms. "You're Ethan Carter?" "Yes. My engineers couldn't solve the problem." Ethan looked around the aircraft only once. "Because they're looking in the wrong place." Without another word, he climbed into the maintenance compartment beneath the wing. The other mechanics exchanged confused looks. For nearly 2 hours, sparks flew beneath the aircraft while rain hammered against the hangar roof. No one interrupted him. Finally, Ethan climbed down, covered in grease. "Start it." One mechanic turned the ignition. Nothing. Alexander sighed. "I knew this was." Suddenly. Hum. The twin engines roared to life with a thunderous growl that echoed through the hangar. Everyone froze. The jet's lights illuminated the building as the turbines spun perfectly. Silence. Then every mechanic began clapping. Alexander couldn't hide his surprise. "How?" Ethan calmly wiped his hands with an old cloth. A cracked fuel sensor confused the computer into thinking the engine was overheating. Everyone kept replacing expensive parts instead of checking the simplest failure. Alexander laughed for the first time that night. I've spent over $2 million trying to solve this problem. You only needed a $20 sensor. The mechanics looked at Ethan with newfound respect. Alexander stepped forward. I keep my promises. He reached into his coat. Name your price. Ethan shook his head. I don't want your money. Alexander frowned. Everyone wants money. Not everyone. Alexander crossed his arms. I said I'd grant one wish. Anything. The hangar became completely silent. Some expected Ethan to ask for $1 million. Others expected a luxury house. A sports car. A promotion. Instead, Ethan looked down at the photograph tucked inside his worn wallet. It showed little Lily smiling beside her late mother. When he finally looked back up, his voice was steady but filled with years of hidden pain. My daughter doesn't need another toy. Alexander listened carefully. She doesn't need expensive clothes. The billionaire's expression softened. She needs someone who'll love her. Ethan swallowed the emotion building inside him. My daughter needs a mom. Every person in the hangar stood speechless. Even the rain outside seemed quieter. Alexander had negotiated billion-dollar mergers without blinking. He had fired executives without hesitation. But this simple wish caught him completely off guard. What exactly are you asking me to do? Alexander asked quietly. I'm not asking you to buy me a wife. A few mechanics smiled. I'm asking you to give me a chance. Alexander waited. I've spent years working every job I could find. I never had time to meet anyone. Every woman I dated left because my daughter always came first. He smiled proudly. And she'll always come first. Alexander nodded slowly. For the first time in years, he saw a man whose greatest dream wasn't wealth or success. It was family. Just then, a young woman hurried into the hangar carrying several folders. She nearly slipped on the wet floor. Ethan instinctively caught her before she fell. Oh. I'm sorry, she laughed nervously. Are you all right? Yes, thank you. Alexander looked at her. Grace. Grace Morgan was his executive assistant, intelligent, kind, and admired by everyone in the company. She was always composed, but tonight she looked exhausted after organizing the emergency flight. She noticed Ethan's grease-covered clothes and smiled politely. You fixed the impossible airplane. He shrugged. It wasn't impossible. Grace smiled a little wider. I like people who solve impossible problems. Neither of them realized Alexander had noticed the brief exchange. An idea began forming in his mind. A strange one. Maybe even a crazy one. But Alexander Blackwell had built an empire by recognizing opportunities others couldn't see. He looked from Ethan to Grace. Then back again. A slow smile appeared on his face. I believe, he said thoughtfully, your wish may be more possible than either of you realizes. Neither Ethan nor Grace understood what he meant. Outside, the storm finally began to clear, and the first faint hint of dawn appeared on the horizon. None of them knew that this rainy night inside an airport hangar had just changed the course of all three of their lives forever, and somewhere across the city, little Lily slept peacefully, unaware that fate had already begun answering the wish she whispered every night before closing her eyes. The family they never expected. The first rays of sunrise filtered through the massive hangar windows as Alexander Blackwell stood silently, watching Ethan Carter pack his old toolbox. The billionaire couldn't stop thinking about the wish he'd just heard. In a world where everyone asked him for money, luxury, or influence, Ethan had asked for something no amount of wealth could simply purchase, a loving mother for his daughter. That request stayed with Alexander long after the private jet disappeared into the morning sky. During the flight to New York, he stared out the window instead of reviewing business reports. His assistant, Grace Morgan, noticed immediately. You're unusually quiet today, she said gently. Alexander smiled faintly. Last night reminded me that success isn't measured by how much money we make. Grace looked surprised. Then how is it measured? Alexander replied, by the people waiting for us when we go home. Those words lingered in Grace's mind. She had devoted her entire life to her career, sacrificing relationships and family dreams along the way. For the first time in years, she wondered if she had chosen the wrong priorities. A week later, after closing the largest business deal in company history, Alexander returned home and called Ethan unexpectedly. "I'd like you to work for Blackwell Aviation as chief maintenance engineer," he offered. Ethan hesitated. "I'm grateful, but I can't accept unless my schedule lets me spend evenings with Lily." Alexander smiled because he had expected that answer. "Your daughter comes first. That's part of the contract." Ethan accepted. His salary tripled overnight, but the biggest reward wasn't the paycheck, it was finally having enough time to be both a father and a provider. On Ethan's first day at the company, Grace was assigned to help him settle into his new office. She expected an arrogant expert who would boast about fixing the impossible airplane, but instead she found a humble man carefully placing a small framed picture of Lily on his desk before anything else. "Your daughter?" Grace asked. Ethan smiled proudly. "My whole world." Grace picked up the picture. Lily's bright smile instantly warmed her heart. "She's adorable." Ethan laughed. "She also believes chocolate milk can solve every problem." Grace chuckled. "She's probably not entirely wrong." From that moment, conversations between them became effortless. They talked during lunch breaks, shared stories after meetings, and discovered they both loved quiet evenings more than glamorous parties. Meanwhile, little Lily couldn't stop asking questions. "Daddy, who is Miss Grace?" Ethan nearly dropped his coffee. "How do you know her name?" Lily grinned mischievously. "You smile every time your phone rings." Ethan blushed. "She's just someone I work with." Lily crossed her tiny arms. "Boys are terrible at lying." Ethan laughed so hard that tears filled his eyes. For the first time since Emily passed away, laughter came naturally inside their little apartment. A few days later, Alexander announced a company family picnic at a beautiful lakeside park. Every employee was encouraged to bring loved ones. Ethan almost declined until Lily begged him to go. The park buzzed with children laughing, music playing, and co-workers enjoying the sunshine. Grace arrived carrying homemade cookies. She spotted Lily sitting alone near the swings while Ethan was helping another employee repair a generator. "Would you like to decorate cookies with me?" Grace asked softly. Lily looked up cautiously. "Are you Daddy's friend?" Grace smiled warmly. "I hope so." Lily nodded. "Then yes." Within minutes they were laughing while covering cookies with colorful icing. Grace helped Lily braid her long hair after the little girl admitted her father tried his best but never got it quite right. Ethan returned and stopped walking. His eyes filled with emotion as he watched Grace gently fixing Lily's hair while both of them laughed together. It was the exact scene Lily had dreamed about for years. Alexander observed everything from a distance. He never interfered. He simply smiled quietly, realizing that sometimes the greatest gift wasn't something you arranged, it was something you allowed to happen naturally. As summer turned into autumn, Grace became a regular part of Ethan and Lily's lives. She attended Lily's school play, helped with homework, baked birthday cakes, and cheered louder than anyone at soccer games. Yet she never tried to replace Emily. Instead, she honored her memory, often telling Lily, "Your mommy will always be part of who you are." Ethan admired that more than anything. Grace wasn't trying to erase the past, she was helping them build a future. One rainy evening, Lily developed a high fever. Ethan panicked as he rushed her to the hospital. Before he even called anyone, Grace appeared in the waiting room carrying fresh clothes, snacks, and Lily's favorite teddy bear. "How did you know?" Ethan asked, exhausted. Grace smiled softly. A father's voice says everything. She stayed the entire night, sitting beside Lily's bed until the fever finally broke. Early the next morning, Lily opened her eyes and whispered weakly, "Can you stay forever?" Grace gently squeezed her hand, unable to hold back tears. "If your daddy wants me to." Several weeks later, Ethan invited Grace to the same airport hangar where they had first met. The repaired private jet stood shining under the lights. Alexander was waiting nearby with a small smile, pretending to inspect the aircraft while secretly knowing exactly why Ethan had invited everyone there. Ethan turned toward Grace, his hands trembling slightly. "The night I fixed this airplane, I asked for one wish because my daughter deserved a family again. I didn't know that life had already started answering that wish the moment you walked into this hangar." He took a small velvet box from his pocket. "Grace Morgan. I don't need someone perfect. I only need someone whose heart already loves my daughter the way mine does. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Grace's face before she could even speak. Finally, she whispered the one word everyone had hoped to hear. "Yes." At that exact moment, little Lily ran forward wearing the brightest smile anyone had ever seen. She wrapped her tiny arms around Grace and asked the question she'd carried in her heart for years. "Can I call you Mom now?" Grace fell to her knees, hugging Lily tightly. "You can call me Mom for the rest of our lives." Ethan couldn't stop crying. Even Alexander quietly wiped away a tear, realizing that this was worth more than every business deal he had ever signed. Months later, the wedding was held beneath a clear blue sky. Alexander proudly walked Grace down the aisle as the father figure she had never truly had. Lily scattered flower petals with pure joy before taking both Ethan's and Grace's hands during the ceremony. As the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Lily stood between them, smiling from ear to ear. Ethan looked toward the heavens and whispered, "Emily, thank you for sending us the strength to keep believing." Sometimes, the greatest miracles don't arrive wrapped in wealth or power. Sometimes they begin with a broken airplane, a father who refused to stop believing, a little girl who never stopped wishing, and a CEO who discovered that granting one heartfelt wish could change far more than a single life. In the end, the plane was repaired in one night, but 3 hearts, once broken by loneliness, found a home that would last forever.